Neera.
Hi, did I wake you up?
No, I've been up, most of the night. If stalemate continues,
Hi Neera.
Hi, Veer.
What's
Where are
up?
you, Delhi or
I am in Jaipur. Coming back
Jaipur?
this evening.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to.
Hello and welcome to NewsClick. It's been several days since what has come to be known as Radiagate has hit the headlines and hit the TV screens and the media. To discuss Radiagate and what we can learn from it about the media in contemporary India, we have with us today our old friend Sukumar Muralidharan, veteran journalist. Welcome to NewsClick. We've seen what has happened with Radiagate. The explosion in the media, the focus it has brought on the credibility of the media, its involvement in various scams that are going around in India today. How do you view this Radiagate phenomenon as we have seen it?
Well, it shows once again that journalists in the course of doing the story somehow fail to keep themselves out of the story. They inject themselves into the story as active players, and in a sense that is completely non-transparent, so that the audience has reason to raise a few questions about the integrity of the information that they're getting through that process, that journalistic process.
Is this about the injection into the story itself, or is it also about media personalities injecting themselves into various policy making, decision making processes that go on and becoming actors in that process as well?
Yes, well, the virtues of distance are what a journalist is taught among the first lessons of the craft, that you keep a distance from all the sources, that you can cultivate a variety of sources, but always keep that distance. Don't get implicated in any agenda that the source might have, whether it's of a business nature or a political nature. But that rule has been violated rather egregiously in this case of Radiagate. And the implications are very clear. The credibility of the media now is thanks to, in part, to the blogosphere and the phenomenon of the social networking channels. The credibility of the media is under question as never before. Now, this was not the case a few years back, for instance, because the media could also control the message. They controlled the tone and the content of the message that was given to you, and they could control the public discourse in a manner that kept their own internal functioning away from public scrutiny. That is not the case anymore.
It's interesting that a lot of the focus has been on the television media coverage and television personalities, Barkha Dutt in NDTV, for example. But it has also involved Veer Sanghvi from the Hindustan Times. Do you see that this process of getting involved with making the news as much as reporting the news has afflicted the television media more than the print media, or has the print media also started getting caught up in this process?
Television obviously shows those scars much more deeply than the print media, because the print media goes through a 24-hour cycle. The news cycle is 24-hour long. It goes through that process of fact verification and then can correct themselves after another appropriate process of fact checking. But the television media, especially in a very competitive environment, has to be seen to be the first with the news, and they often come up under the pressure of the so-called breaking news, come up with half-baked stories, little realizing that there could be serious damage in various spheres of activity on account of that inauthentic piece of news put out.
And in this case, one of the charges against Barkha was in fact that she, in a sense, suppressed a story. She got involved in the negotiations of who is going to be minister and so on. But the fact that this was happening, these backdoor negotiations were happening, was itself a story, and she chose not to report it.
Exactly. The story there is that there was great high voltage lobbying process underway over the allocation of the telecom ministry after the last general elections. And there were two very powerful lobbies at work. There was one lobby that was pushing the case of Dayanidhi Maran, there was the other lobby that was pushing the case of Raja, both DMK members of parliament. We learned from these conversations that one news channel, was putting out stories saying that the chief of the DMK, Mr. Karunanidhi, was not at all happy with Raja's candidacy and that he was backing Maran's case. And this lobbyist, Madam Meera Radia, leaned on the other channel, a competing channel, to put out the opposite story, that actually Mr. Karunanidhi has no serious grievance with Raja's case. So in that process of competition between the two business lobbies, we don't know what other games were being played. Like, for instance, how was the share market moving? Was the Bharti Airtel share, what was kind of movement of that share in the market? Who were the people with inside knowledge of that whole bargaining process going on? How many of them knew that Mr. Maran tended to lean favorably towards the Bharti Airtel case, and how many of them knew that Raja was considered to be more inclined towards Tata, and so on? So what all games were being played in the stock market, all that remains an area of opacity. And now that is the reason why the media should be a little restrained in going about this breaking news business.
But in this case, it was not only about what news is being put across or not. It was also about these people, television anchors, editors of newspapers, getting involved with lobbying on behalf of corporate interests in government formation. Yes. So it is not just about news or about the media, but it was about a different kind of manipulation of policy which was taking place.
Exactly. Now, the big story that was not broadcast then is that the business lobbies were very keenly pressing for one candidate or the other.
Exactly.
For that telecom ministry.
And prominent news people were being involved in this lobbying process.
Exactly, and they kept that news away from the public. So there is a egregious omission. You can't yet say that they were guilty of a crime of commission, but certainly they were guilty of a crime of omission. In that circumstance, I don't think it's necessary to prove that a quid pro quo existed to establish a case of journalistic misconduct. Just the fact that the news was suppressed is sufficient evidence of that.
Let me take a slightly different tack and talk about there have been suspicions about media involvement in deal making, in corruption in one way or another. We all know about the paid news stories. We've heard about journalists being paid by governments in different forms, by being offered flats or perks and other things. Is this trend now becoming more pervasive? Has the public now got more reason to be suspicious of media reportage of all kinds?
Certainly, if you look at the paid news phenomenon, the story broke after the last general elections, when several newspapers were found to be carrying stories identical with the others and under bylines which were fictitious. Several newspapers were known to be covering stories completely contrary to their editorial position, their stated editorial position. And this led to certain inquiries from the Press Council of India, which resulted in a fairly comprehensive report, which named names and established that a number of our most leading newspaper groups were indulging in that practice. This unfortunately was not cleared by the full meeting of the Press Council and got whittled down to about 1/10 of its original size. Yeah. And the ultimate result was a fairly sanitized report, which just was an exercise in hand-wringing and didn't even approach the subject of curative measures for checking this abuse. Later, there was an intervention in this matter by the Securities Exchange Board of India, SEBI, yeah, which issued a norm saying that newspapers should disclose their holdings in different companies when they are reporting on those companies. There should be full disclosure of these financial interests. Now, this was kept out of the news.
In the era of liberalization, it's being said that in the days of the license Raj, corruption was practiced but took place at day-to-day small levels. In the era of liberalization is the era of mega deals and mega corruption. And this has afflicted political parties, the bureaucracy, corporate houses. Can we now see that this is also afflicting the media, who is also becoming a part of this process of mega deals and mega corruption in one form or another?
Somewhere along the way, and I would say yes, 20 years back is when the process really accelerates. I'm not pretending that we didn't have this malaise earlier, but 20 years back is when it really accelerates. I think the media lost its path, lost its vision, in the sense that its stock in trade is information, and it continuously started devaluing that stock in trade. Now a newspaper is sold several times over before it reaches the consumer. It is sold several times over to the advertiser. For a successful newspaper group, at least 85% of revenue comes from advertising. So there's been a progressive enhancement of the clout of the advertiser and a progressive diminishing of the value of the audience. So in a sense, that relationship with the audience, that is the lifeblood of the media, is becoming progressively weaker. And the entire message is now being manipulated to suit the interests of the advertiser. And the advertiser, we all know, is interested only in the upper income strata with the high purchasing power demographic strata. So the entire message now of the media is tailored to that audience taste, and the rest might as well just not exist.
Last question I wanted to ask. Till now, there had at least been, for public consumption, an internal code that they would not attack each other in public. That finally now seems to have started to break, with one section of the media pouncing on the other. Is this a trend which we are likely to start seeing more of?
No, certainly it's become much more competitive now, and the code of silence, I'm sure, would have been maintained if the internet had not intervened with its own kind of process of news dissemination, which the established media houses had no control over. Now, once the cat is out of the bag, how does the media retrieve the situation? I think they're doing whatever they can. At one time, the media had nothing to say about Radiagate. Now it seems that they can't stop talking about it. And most of what they're saying is in the nature of self-extenuation, to try and pretend that nothing really was amiss with this pattern of interaction with the business lobbyist. Now, my point is simply that there's no necessity to establish a quid pro quo. It is sufficient to show that the media personalities involved were so caught up in that that environment of clubbing with the rich and the powerful, that they failed to keep their distance. And the quid pro quo need not necessarily be for individual journalists. The media itself is sustained by a linkage with the corporate sector. The media itself is in a sense part of the corporate sector. And just to give you an idea of the magnitudes involved, if you look at Hindustan Lever, which is one of the larger advertisers in this country, the annual advertising budget of this company is almost 3,000 crore rupees. The total annual revenue of HT Media, which is one of the more well-established, is about 1,300 crores. So with the advertising budget of Hindustan Unilever, they can buy up the entire annual turnover of HT Media twice over. So there's this extreme disproportion in terms of financial power between the media and the rest of the corporate sector. But the media obviously has to establish its own status within that power equation by refusing to compromise on its basic function, which is the provision of information. But unfortunately, even that process has become rapidly vitiated in this era of liberalization.
Right. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can discuss, but we are out of time. So we will leave it for now, and I'm sure we'll have occasion to come back to this topic very soon. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.